Yeah, that's a word you know by heart.
Listen, the only reason I made Resident Evil was I had a passion for the video games. I played the video games and I loved them, and I thought they should be made into movies. And the reason why Mila did the first movie was that her brother would play the video games and she would watch it and she was really into it. So this whole franchise came out of passion, passion for a subject matter. And I still feel that passion. And so does Mila. And I tell you, if we ever stopped feeling the passion, we'd never make another movie again to do with Resident Evil. These are not pieces of business for us. They're not kind of paydays. They're not like career moves. I love Resident Evil, and as long as I love it, I would continue making it. And if I ever felt like I couldn't deliver like maximum passion for it, I wouldn't do it. And I think that's one of the it's now the longest running video game franchise ever. And if I had to pick a reason why that is I was not a director for hire. I came to this with a passion, and I think that passion has continued. And I think the movies they're made with passion, and they're made with kind of a kind of input and an integrity that you can't buy just by hiring people to work on your movie. And I think that's what pushes the franchise forward.
How do you compete with the big blockbusters? Like I just saw a sneak peek of Sucker Punch, which is the Zack Snyder movie. That's probably like 150 million budget or something like that. Do you have to be more creative when you don't have the James Cameron money?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, some of my favorite movies when I was a teenager and I was a young filmmaker, I loved John Carpenter films, and I thought what he did with a limited budget, whether it was Escape from New York or Halloween, I mean, he created amazing worlds on a shoestring, right? And I always admired that. And I had the great pleasure of meeting John Carpenter recently. And I think there's an art to that, and certainly it's something you learn when you come out of Europe, because I started obviously as a European filmmaker in independent European films. There isn't as much money as there is in Hollywood, but you still want to make these big movies, so you learn how to get a big look, but you don't spend quite so much money. And I think that's a particularly European skill set, and that's, in a word, that's how we compete with those big blockbusters. I mean, we make our movies for a fraction of the price, but when you actually look at the business they do just like the last Resident Evil movie and Watchmen pretty much made the same money worldwide. I think once you look at the DVD sales, I'm sure you'll find that Resident Evil's bigger than Watchmen, but that was like big budget. Sorry, I could go on and on.
What was the reason behind you meeting John Carpenter?
He was outside smoking cigarettes at the facility. He was mixing his movie, and I was doing ADR. So I said hello to him. I said what a huge fan I was, and then the following day, Mila came in for ADR, and the two of them I could where's Mila? She should be doing her ADR. She's always outside smoking cigarettes with John Carpenter. So he's a lovely guy.
You're going to lose her to him? Are they going to work together?
Listen, she thought he was fantastic, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay. Talking about this, you said, before you mentioned you grew up with the passion for the movie.
Yeah.
You also had a chance to grow up with your wife, which is not something that people get a chance to. And beside that, from not a kid, but a young woman. Now she's a young kid to a woman, man.
Yes.
Now, how do you, on a personal level, and not the gossip, you see this woman grow as an actress and as a woman?
Well, it's been fantastic because really, Resident Evil has been, she's grown from like a young girl who in the first movie didn't know what her name was and didn't know anything about herself to like a woman who's much more certain of herself, both in the movies and in life in general. So that's been a real, it's been a fantastic thing for me to be involved in. And, now we have a daughter together as well, so it's kind of like pushing it to the next level. I mean, it really is, we joke about Resident Evil being a family business, but it really is, and, we work with the same producers, and quite often we work with the same team of people who make them. It's like, it's a pleasure every couple of years to return to these films and make another one, absolutely.
Could you talk about the 3D, because the 3D cameras are difficult to shoot because you have to last longer the frame, and you can cut very choppy, so it changes your style in terms of filmmaking.
My style of shooting completely changed.
Yeah.
If you look if you look at the visual style of Death Race, which is the last movie I directed, and this movie, I mean, they look completely different. I think they look very stylish, both of them, but in very, very different ways. And that's really because of 3D, and that's for me what makes a mockery of all of these 2D dimensionalizations. You can't make a movie in 2 dimensions and then make it a successful 3D movie, creatively anyway. Financially, obviously you can, because Clash of the Titans made a lot of money, even though everyone hated the 3D. Because everything, when you're composing a shot in 3D, you compose it differently to when you compose it in 2D. You're also thinking about the depth. You end up designing sets that accentuate it. You end up, I wrote a 3D script. When I was writing the script, I was writing it as a 3D script, because there are things that work incredibly well in 3D, like sets that show lots of perspectives, so like tight claustrophobic tunnels, elevator shafts, big wide landscapes. It's the reason why Mila has an aeroplane in the movie, is because I knew aerial shots look fantastic in 3D. And we could shoot in like these amazing glaciers in Alaska and have a tiny plane flying over these huge landscapes. Also another thing that looks good in 3D is particulate matter in the air. So that could be rain or it could be smoke. So there's a lot of rain in this movie.
Yeah, so the short clip you show us a couple of months before in the bathroom.
Yes.
Well, it was great.
Yeah, and what's obviously that's an effect you can only get if you shoot 3D, because if you were to shoot it 2D and try and dimensionalize it, you would have to rotoscope around every single raindrop, which you can't do. But that scene, I'm trying to make it rain indoors, so you've got to think of a reason why, and that affects where it's because the executioner decapitates these shower heads, but that necessitated, the whole scene has to be set in a shower block, and that gets written into the script. So for me, you make a 3D movie organically, and it has to grow even from the script.
How did you develop this knowledge? How to use 3D? How you want to use it? Do you watch a lot of 3D? Did you talk to specialists before?
I'd always been interested in 3D. I would always go and see 3D movies, like back in the 80s I was watching 3D films. But I always felt it was a great idea, and the technology had never really caught up with the idea. And I think finally now, especially with the camera and pace rigs which we used, it has. And 3D is really, it's now, if you shoot it correctly, it's really where it should be. So I watched a lot of 3D movies, good ones and bad ones, to see mistakes that have been made, and also to see